It happened on a Friday evening at the Mariner's Table, one of the most elegant restaurants in Savannah. The chandeliers glowed like melted gold, and the waiters moved in quiet rhythm, carrying trays of champagne and laughter. I had come to celebrate my son Lucas's promotion, just like any proud mother would. I wore my best navy dress, the same one I had saved for special days. It wasn't new, but it was clean, pressed, and carried years of quiet pride. When I walked in, I could feel the shift in the air. Caroline, my daughter-in-law, saw me first. Her smile was polite, but her eyes told a different story: embarrassment, maybe even annoyance. She looked around the crowded table where Lucas's colleagues and their wives were seated. The table sparkled with crystal glasses and too much perfume. "Oh, Mom," she said in that sugar-coated tone people use when they want to sound kind but don't mean it. "The table's already full. Maybe there's a diner down the street that suits you better." For a moment, I thought I had misheard her. The laughter around the table froze, uncertain whether it was a joke or cruelty dressed as humor. Lucas didn't say a word. He just looked down at his glass, pretending to check his phone. That silence hurt more than Caroline's words. I stood there, feeling the weight of every sacrifice I had made for that boy. Every night I worked overtime, every meal I skipped so he could eat better, every dream I had put aside so he could chase his. And here I was, not worthy of a seat at his table. But humiliation has a strange way of sharpening the mind. I took a breath, straightened my back, and looked at the nearest waiter. "Excuse me," I said calmly. "Could you please call your manager for me?" The young waiter blinked, confused, then nodded and hurried away. Conversation at the table resumed in awkward whispers, but I stood still, my hands clasped loosely in front of me. When the manager appeared, I smiled softly and said, "Tell him the owner, Miriam Locke, is here." The sound of forks stopping midair filled the room. Even the background music seemed to fade. Caroline's face turned pale, and Lucas finally looked up, eyes wide in disbelief. The waiter's eyes flickered between us, unsure if this was a misunderstanding or a movie scene unfolding before him. "I'm sorry, Ma," the manager stammered. "Of course, Mrs. Locke." He quickly gestured for me to follow him to the center of the restaurant. The room fell completely silent. I could feel every pair of eyes on me, the same eyes that moments ago looked past me as if I were invisible. As I reached the head of the table, I paused, turned to Caroline, and said quietly, "Be careful who you laugh at. Some of us built the walls you're standing inside." Then I smiled, not out of revenge but relief. I had carried my dignity in silence for too long. Tonight, I wasn't the invisible woman in the corner. Tonight, I was the woman who owned the table. Long before I owned the Mariner's Table, I scrubbed modal floors for a living. After my husband passed away, it was just me and 2 boys to feed. The Harbor Inn Motel sat at the edge of the highway, with faded carpets and guests who rarely stayed more than a night. I worked every shift they offered, folding sheets until my hands cracked and my back ached. I used to hum old gospel songs while cleaning, just to keep myself from breaking down. The sound of vacuum cleaners, the smell of bleach, those became my world. Some nights I'd sit outside on the curb after my shift and count the coins I had saved in a tin box labeled for the boys. Lucas was 12 then, already dreaming of college. Ethan was 8, gentle and quiet, always waiting for me with his drawings of boats and sunshine. One evening, a regular guest named Mr. Klein, a retired accountant, stopped by the laundry room where I worked. "You're too smart to be folding towels all your life," he said. I laughed, thinking it was a joke. But he came back the next week with a small notebook and taught me how to record expenses, calculate interest, and save in small steps. "Don't just work for money," he said. "Make money work for you." It sounded impossible back then, but I listened. I opened a small savings account. A few years later, I bought a rundown cafe near the docks, the Dockside Cafe. I had no idea what I was doing, but I had Daniel Cho, a kind man who cooked like an artist and believed in me. We worked side by side, serving fishermen at dawn and tourists at dusk. Slowly, word spread. The cafe started making enough to hire staff. From there, I took another risk, investing profits into a second restaurant. 1 became 2, then 5. Daniel handled operations while I learned the language of business leases, payrolls, taxes. By the time I turned 50, we had formed Locke Hospitality Group, a company that owned several restaurants and small hotels across Savannah. But I kept my secret. My sons thought I was still managing a cafe. I never corrected them. Pride can be a dangerous thing for a mother. It makes you hide your success so your children can feel taller. I didn't realize then that humility, when misunderstood, can look like weakness. As the years went by, my boys grew into men. Lucas, the ambitious one, rose quickly in the banking world. Ethan, the gentler soul, became an engineer, though his career never quite found steady ground. I was proud of them both, though they rarely called anymore. It's strange how the more successful your children become, the less they seem to remember the hands that built their foundation. Lucas started hosting dinners with his colleagues, events filled with fine wine and people who spoke too loudly about money. I would get invitations sometimes, though always as an afterthought. When I showed up, I'd notice how Caroline, his wife, would glance at my shoes, at my purse, at the simple cardigan I wore. She never said anything cruel, not directly. But silence can hurt more than words. It's the kind of silence that makes you feel like furniture there but unseen. Ethan visited occasionally, often to fix a leaky faucet or mow the lawn. He loved his brother but lived in his shadow. Once, when I asked him why he didn't stand up for himself, he said softly, "It's easier to just let Lucas lead." I saw the same thing happening between them and me. It was easier for them to let me fade quietly into the background. Then, one Sunday afternoon, Lucas came by with Caroline. They sat me down, smiling politely, and started talking about the future. Lucas said, "Mom, we've been thinking, maybe it's time you consider moving into a senior community. You'd have company there and everything you need." He said it so gently that someone else might mistaken it for love, but I saw it for what it was: a polite eviction. A way to move me out of their picture-perfect lives. I didn't argue, I just nodded, pretending to think it over. Inside, I made a decision. If they wanted me out of their world, I would leave, but not quietly. That night, I took out an old recorder from my drawer. I began saving every message, every conversation. I wasn't planning revenge then. I was gathering truth. Because one day, I knew, truth would speak louder than all their polite lies. The night of the dinner felt almost theatrical, as if life itself had set the stage. The Mariner's table was glowing in warm candlelight when I arrived, the same restaurant where I had once been told there was no seat for me. This time I had reserved the entire middle section. Not a single person knew why. I walked in wearing a simple ivory suit, nothing extravagant, but it carried quiet authority. The maitre d' bowed slightly and said, "Good evening, Mrs. Locke." Heads turned. People whispered. Caroline's laughter stopped mid-sentence. Lucas froze when he saw me. He probably assumed I had come uninvited again. "Mom," he said cautiously, "I thought this was a private event." "Oh, it is," I answered, "and it's about to get very personal." Daniel appeared from the kitchen, wiping his hands on a towel, a faint smile on his face. "Welcome back, Mrs. Locke," he said warmly. "It's an honor to have the owner here tonight." The room went silent. Someone dropped a fork. Caroline's face drained of color. Lucas's jaw tightened, confusion flickering into disbelief. "Owner," he repeated. I nodded calmly and gestured toward the long table. "Please don't let me interrupt. Continue your celebration." No one moved. I took a seat at the head of the table, the same seat where the regional director had been sitting moments ago. I looked around and said to the waiter, "Bring a bottle of the 2005 Bordeaux. Send it to my son's table on the house." Then I raised my glass and said clearly, "To family, the kind that remembers where it came from." Every pair of eyes was on me now. The guests, the staff, even the pianist who had stopped mid-tune. I reached into my bag and placed a folder on the table. Inside were copies of legal documents, property deeds, partnership contracts, and the founding charter of Locke Hospitality Group, the company Lucas thought belonged to distant investors. I turned the folder toward him. "You've been celebrating in my restaurant for years, Lucas. The one I built from scratch when you were still wearing hand-me-down shoes." He blinked, trying to speak. Caroline looked away, shame creeping across her face. "Mom, I didn't know," he muttered. "I know you didn't," I said softly. "That's the problem. You never asked." Daniel came over and placed a hand on my shoulder. "Mrs. Locke, would you like to address the staff?" he asked. I smiled. "No, Daniel, tonight isn't about power. It's about respect." I stood, looking at everyone gathered there, and added, "When you forget where you come from, life has a way of reminding you. Sometimes gently, sometimes like this." Then I lifted my glass once more. "Dinner's on me, as always." The room stayed silent, not out of fear but out of awe. For the first time in years, I felt seen not as a mother to be dismissed, but as a woman who had earned her place at the table she built. News travels fast in a city like Savannah. By Monday morning, everyone seemed to know the story. Banker humiliates his mother, learns she owns his restaurant. It was printed in local papers, whispered in coffee shops, even joked about on the radio. Lucas called me that afternoon, his voice shaky. "Mom, people are talking. The bank wants me on leave until this settles down." "I'm sure they do," I said quietly. "Take the time to think. Reflection is free, and you could use some." Caroline stopped showing her face at social events. Her friends from the junior league politely distanced themselves. The same people who had once praised her now called her tone deaf, entitled cruel. Public sympathy turned to me, though I didn't enjoy it. I wasn't looking for applause. I only wanted truth to do what it always does, come into the light. Ethan was the only one who visited me during those weeks. He brought flowers and a nervous smile, sitting at the kitchen table like a boy again. "Mom, I didn't mean to stay silent," he said. "I just didn't know how to stop Lucas." I reached for his hand. "You don't stop people by shouting louder, son. You stop them by showing what grace looks like." He nodded, tears in his eyes. That was the first honest conversation we'd had in years. When the noise around town finally began to fade, I made my next move. Not revenge, reform. I founded the Second Sunrise Foundation, a program to support elderly parents abandoned or neglected by their families. Daniel helped me set it up, turning one of our smaller properties into a day center where seniors could gather, eat, and learn basic financial skills. When reporters asked if this was my revenge, I simply said, "No, it's a mirror. Sometimes people need to see what they've become before they can change." I didn't disown my children. I didn't even cut them off. But I did send each of them the same letter. It read, "Love is free. Respect, however, must be earned. And in this family, the only way to earn it back is through work." 2 weeks later, I invited all 3 of them to the foundation's new community center. Lucas arrived first, in a suit far too formal for the occasion. Caroline followed, sunglasses hiding her eyes. Ethan came last, carrying a box of tools, unsure what to expect. I waited until they all sat down before speaking. "You each have a choice," I began. "You can leave right now and continue living as if nothing happened. Or you can stay and earn back the respect that was lost. But it will not come easy." Caroline frowned. "What do you mean, earn it?" I handed her an envelope. Inside was a work-scheduled dishwashing and prep shifts at the Mariners' table, 5 days a week. She gasped. Lucas looked at his own paper, janitorial duties at Locke Hospitality's office downtown. Ethan's task was different, maintenance and repair at the foundation's senior apartments. Lucas scoffed. "Mom, this is ridiculous. You want us to clean floors?" I met his eyes. "Those floors paid for your degree." He fell silent. "This isn't punishment," I continued. "It's education. You forgot the dignity of work. I want you to remember." The first few days were difficult for them. Lucas called me, furious, after someone from his old office saw him mopping the lobby. "People are laughing," he said. "Good," I replied. "Let them. Humility starts when pride hurts." Caroline nearly quit on her 3rd shift. A diner filmed her washing dishes and posted it online. The video went viral with the caption, "Socialite scrubs plates at her mother-in-law's restaurant." She didn't leave the house for days. But Daniel visited her, left a note that read, "Real strength isn't in being admired. It's in showing up again." The next morning she returned to the kitchen. Ethan, on the other hand, found quiet joy in his work. He fixed leaky pipes and changed bulbs for elderly residents who reminded him of his mother. One woman hugged him and whispered, "You have kind hands, son. Don't lose them to shame." That night, he cried in the parking lot. Months passed. Calluses replaced soft palms. Apologies turned into actions. Slowly, the pride in their voices softened into gratitude. When I saw Lucas helping a new janitor learn how to polish marble floors, I smiled to myself. For the first time, he looked like the man I had hoped he would become. Work didn't just clean their hands, it cleaned their hands, it cleaned their hearts. 3 months later, I invited them to dinner at my old house. No grand gestures, no faff, no fancy place settings, just my worn wooden table, 3 chairs, and the smell of roast chicken drifting through the air. The same meal I used to make when they were children. They arrived quietly, unsure whether they were guests or still students of a lesson. Caroline carried a pie she had baked herself. Her hands trembled as she set it down. Lucas helped pour the water, not wine. Ethan sat first, eyes lowered, waiting for someone to speak. For a while no one did. The only sound was the ticking clock on the wall. Then Caroline broke the silence. "I was cruel," she said, voice shaking. "I thought respect came from appearance, not character. I was wrong." Lucas followed, his tone heavy. I was ashamed, Mom. Not of you, but of what people might think. I forgot who raised me. I forgot what real strength looks like. Ethan's eyes glistened. I stayed quiet. I thought silence kept peace. But silence also lets hurt grow. I looked at the three of them, the banker, the socialite, the quiet dreamer, and for the first time, I saw not arrogance or shame, but sincerity. They had changed. The work, the humility, the time, it had all done its job. I reached out and took their hands. Forgiveness, I said, isn't something you ask for. It's something you prove every day. We ate slowly, sharing old memories. Laughter returned, tentative but genuine. When dinner ended, Lucas stood up to clear the table. Caroline joined him, washing dishes while Ethan dried them. I watched quietly, the rhythm of plates and running water sounding almost like music. That night, I slept with the window open. The air smelled like rain and second chances. 5 years can change everything if you let it. Savannah still hums with its soft southern rhythm, but my life has settled into something gentler, quieter, and far more meaningful. Lucas now manages one of our mid-sized hotels, the kind that serves working families rather than high society events. He insists on greeting the staff by name each morning. Sometimes I visit unannounced just to watch him thank the janitor or refill coffee for a guest. The man who once cared about status now understands service. Caroline runs a community kitchen attached to our foundation. She teaches cooking classes for seniors who live alone, showing them affordable, healthy meals they can make in small apartments. Her voice, once sharp and polished for social events, has softened. She still carries her pride, but it's shaped differently now, more like purpose than vanity. Ethan finally found his place. He married Tessa, one of the volunteers he met while repairing the foundation's housing units. Together they manage a program called Fix with Respect, where young people learn basic home repair while working for low-income families. He often says, "Mom, it's not about what we build, it's about who we build it with." Every time he says it, I see the boy he used to be, gentle, patient, full of light. As for me, I've stepped back from the day-to-day operations of Locke Hospitality. Daniel and a younger team now handle the business, while I dedicate my time to the Second Sunrise Foundation. We've grown from a single center to 4 across the state. Hundreds of older men and women who once felt forgotten now have a place to belong. We teach them to budget, to write resumes, even to start small businesses. Some days I sit among them, listening to their stories, realizing we all share the same desire to be seen, to be valued, to matter. Last year, the Mariners table celebrated its 40th anniversary. On one wall hangs a brass plaque engraved with the words, "Dignity is the house special here." Every time I walk past it I smile, not because of pride but because those words are true. People still ask if I regret exposing my family that night. I always tell them the same thing: I didn't expose them. I simply revealed the truth. Time didn't erase what happened, but it transformed it. The woman who was once told she didn't belong at the table now welcomes others to sit beside her. Respect isn't inherited, it's earned one choice, one act, one humble day at a time. And if this story found you tonight, wherever you are, take it as a reminder: dignity costs nothing, but losing it costs everything. If you believe in second chances, share this story, like it, comment, tell me where you're watching from. Because maybe, just maybe, your voice will be someone else's sunrise.